This video will show you how to export data from 3 CRMs, WiredContact, Act, and Zoho into Google My Maps. There are chapter markers for each CRM in case you wanted to skip ahead. I just discovered Google My Maps after having a conversation with ChatGPT asking it how to visualize data directly from Excel into a mapping program. After trying some Excel plugins for free, nothing satisfied me or my client's potential requirements. Thus, I decided to try out Google My Maps since I've never heard of it until now. Please note Google My Maps is a different application than the standard Google Maps site or mobile app that we use daily. So here's the business case to make this video for everybody. A couple of our clients needed to plot data from the CRM so they could visualize it on a map. So if a rep is driving within a territory, the rep can easily visualize who else they can see right away so their road trips are more efficient. In the past, I pitched a third-party app and I've probably sold 5 licenses in 20 years. So I wanted to find an economical solution for everyone without a client having to resort to either custom development fees or managing another vendor's plugin. So here are my findings with the 3 applications right out of their respective boxes. Here is WiredContact. I have customized this interface a bit with my branding, colors, and fonts. Your WiredContact screen will probably look a little different. However, the menus and icons we'll use are similar across all WiredContact sites in this lesson. We're going to show you one way how to get the data out of the system that's universal among the sites we support. Then we'll get into the Google My Maps page. So after logging in, we're going to go to the Reports page over here. Then we'll click on what's called the Contact Wizard. So you'll see a star, put the cursor over that, and you will see the name of the report wizard we're going to use today. First, you're going to select a template. Instead of the default, click Export. And now what we need to do is get the fields out that we want to see on Google Maps. I'm going to get a few of them out right now. So first I will grab something pretty obvious like company, click this icon here. I'll click address, and I'll get the rest of the fields here in a minute. So these are the fields I want. In this case, the vendor services field is custom for this site because in this case I'm going to present, I want to see on the map the services these vendors provide. And before I get to the next step, I'm going to show something a little unusual. I'm going to grab a field called the unique ID. And what this does is this will be handy later because let's say one of my vendors changes their street address. Google My Maps will allow me to update existing records based on a field like unique ID so I do not plot duplicate records in future uploads. The next decision is to figure out which contacts I want to export. I could either take the current lookup, but I'm going to do something different. In this case, I want to select the criteria here on which contacts I want to get out of WiredContact. For this example, I'm going to look for all my vendors. In this site, they are sorted by record type equals vendor. And I'm just going to look for the state of Florida. So I'll go here, state equals Florida. You can sort by company if you wish. And before we go there, let's make this a file name that's easy to find later. In this case, I'm going to call it Florida vendors.csv. Now that I have everything ready, I will hit Request Report. And I'll hit Open. And there's our contacts. Before we get into Google My Maps, I'm compelled to show you something that's pretty slick in WiredContact. Actually, I'm going to close this file. I'm going to show you where that report lives if you need to retrieve it later. Go to Libraries, go to Reports, and you will see by the date and timestamp, this is the latest file. If you need to open it again, click the upward arrow. So that's cool if you lost the file in your downloads folder later on, but there's another cool thing you can do with WiredContact that's kind of a hidden feature or hidden gem. Look over here at My Report Templates. If you click this icon, this is the report we just created, click this magnifying glass. It saves everything we did. So you got the export, these are the fields, the criteria, the sort, and the file name. I'm going to save this into something a little more memorable. Click outside the box, and it saves the file name. So that's great if it's just for you. If you wanted to share this template among your crew, what you can do is there's another feature here called the library. Now you may have different folders here. This is just our site, but if you go to public, start here, create a folder. I'm going to call this one Report Templates. Hit update. And what you can do is take this template, click Move, open up the library. You will see Report Templates. Now click this right arrow here, this little arrow. And it actually copies it, not necessarily moves. So if I go back up to Report Templates, we have this. So this template is available for other users. So if I logged in as somebody else, they go up to the main library, look here, and they'll click on Move, and then they'll move it to their local My Report Templates folder. So I know I went off the Google My Maps lesson a little bit, but I believe this is really important to learn how to use this feature in WiredContact so you can share these features among your peers and make it easier to use WiredContact. Okay, let's get into Google My Maps. To use Google My Maps, sign in with your Google account, then go to mymaps.google.com. Then click Create a New Map. Let's make a name. All right, now that we have a map, I'm going to add my first layer. So I'm going to import our CSV file that we created a moment ago. There's Florida vendors. We'll hit open. The first screen shows you which fields you need to select to plot the data point. Since WiredContact doesn't have the latitude and longitude by default, what I do here is grab the address, city, state, and zip. We'll hit continue. Now what I want to do is show the main piece of data here. This is like the main marker. So I want to see the company first when I plot the data point. Now I'll hit finish. And if we zoom in, we're starting to see all our vendors. And what you can do, which is kind of cool, if you had errors in your data, you can hit open data table and, hey, some data in our sample set didn't quite have a street address, so it ain't going to bring those in. If you wish, you can go back and update these fields later if you wish. You can update them in the map, or if you went back to WiredContact, you can import them, and since you know the unique ID, it will just update that existing record with the latest data. All right, I'm going to show maybe a couple more slick little features here. I'll go here and I'm going to rename this to Wired Contact Sample. And one more thing I can show is if I click this, you can group things by the vendor services and change the label. So now if I look at down here, you can see some of the contacts have paving on there, but I probably just do company. Click outside there, and now you can see the services category now has unique colors on the map. So you notice in this case, this is just a standard repair. This guy here is both an asphalt and a concrete repair service. So there you have it. There are probably some more advanced features we can get into with Google My Maps, but I basically wanted to show how to get that data up here. So this is a basic overview of how to get some data in. But before we proceed, I'll show one pretty interesting feature. If I click this, I can just take a little map and take this and figure out how far it is to go from point A to point B. So in this case, if I have the Walgreens I need to repair in Port St. Lucie, but my vendor's over here, I already know it's like a quick 47-mile jaunt. It's probably not worth for the contractor to come all the way up to Port St. Lucie to fix my problem. Okay, that is the end of this section. In this bonus section, I'm going to upload some updates. Notice that these two rows weren't able to be plotted because of the bad address. So I went back in the WiredContact, made some updates, and I'm going to try to update those two records with proper data. So I'm going to go Options, Re-import, Update Matching Items, and I created a update file here using the same techniques I used a few moments ago. And in this case, select the column to match places. So I want to hit unique ID on both sides because what I wanted to do is just update based on unique ID. Then I truly know that those records are unique in both places. So I'll hit finish. Ta-da! The error has gone away. And now, check out this location in Fort Myers. This vendor has been properly updated. So that ends the lesson here on using WiredContact and Google My Maps together. Let's get into ACT. For this exercise, I will take my prospects and get them out to Excel before putting them into Google My Maps. I will demonstrate two techniques to get the data out of the system. One will be a standard lookup, then the second technique will be using a dynamic group. So in this database, I use the ID status field to filter by prospect. So let's go here, and most people that use ACT know how to do this. So you go to lookup menu, you go to ID status, and you can say either contains or equal to prospect. In this case, it'll be equal, and there are my prospects. But what I want to do before I import this into Google My Maps is to get the proper columns. Some of these are extraneous, like the user is user, private, favorite. You don't need any of that. So let's go to the options menu, customize columns. Let's take out the fields we don't need. I'm just double clicking on the columns I do not need, and they'll leave the list. But I do want to see whether they're a prospect or not on the map. And then I will hit OK. So now I have, oh, let's take out that one. We don't need address to. And now we have our columns. And to get that to Excel, I'll click this icon here. If you don't see the spreadsheet show up automatically, it may be blinking down here. Let's do a save. Here's the file name. I'll hit save. And what we should do before we go into Google My Maps is create this as a CSV file. CSV, we hit that, it's in the same directory, hit save, and we're good to go. Before we move on to the Google My Maps screen, I wanted to address using the dynamic groups feature in ACT. Sometimes people have used ACT for 20 years and never knew this feature existed, so I do want to address it here. Let's go to groups. We'll create a new group by hitting, let's make a name, and we're going to press a button here called Add Remove Contacts. Instead of manually adding the contacts, I want the database to do the heavy lifting. Let's go to Contacts. We'll look for the ID status, equal to, prospect, add to list. Now this is where it gets more interesting. You're like, okay, that's just one field. But if you are moving data into Google Maps, you should probably have the address filled in. So why bring in leads that don't have an address? So let's do it by taking the address field and saying it must contain data. And we'll do the same for the city. The state. And hit preview. And now this will always look up prospects that have the address completely filled in, or at least it contains data. If they put something in like PO Box or something that's not quite a true address, the computer can't disseminate one way or the other. This just prevents people from uploading prospects that don't have anything filled in those fields. We hit OK, hit OK again, and this will always be available. So if you needed to export that list, you right-click over here, you hit Create Lookup, and those are the 49 contacts, and you hit Export to Excel again. All right, that is the end of getting data out of ACT. Let's jump into using Google My Maps with this data. Here we are at Google My Maps. Take note, this is slightly different than the standard Google Maps that you use on your cell phone or on a daily basis to go find out how to get somewhere or look up a restaurant. So after you go to mymaps.google.com and you have a Google account, you will be able to get to this program. What we're going to do here is create a new map. In a previous lesson, I created this importing WiredContact data, but in this case, we're going to create a new map just for the ACT data. And when I go to the little kebab menu here, I'll just call it the Mondo CRM ACT demo map. Now, what I will do is hit import. I'm going to get the file by hitting browse. I'll go grab my CSV file. And the first step is to tell Google which fields are creating the latitude and longitude mark. So in other words, the address, city, state, and zip will help Google place those records in the appropriate spot on the map. Hit continue, and then hit company. And then what that will do is that will be the title on each pin. Hit finish. Ta-da! And here is everybody on each of the push pins. What I may do here is go here and click this and rename it to ACT Prospects. And what I can do as well is change some colors so it's a little more distinguished. And one other thing I may do here is make it a little easier to distinguish what company is actually showing up here. And if you want to have the company name on each of your pins, click Uniform Style, change this to company. And now if you look in, now you can start distinguishing all your prospects that you just imported. I'll review a couple different features of Google My Maps that you can refine the map a little further, but this lesson or this video series really only focuses on getting data from the CRM to Google My Maps. So I'm sure there's a lot more tricks that I'm not going to show today, but this should get you at least up and running. So with this layer, you can either open the table and change data on the fly here, so it's its own independent database going forward. Or you can re-import data and replace everything or update matching items or add more items. So it's kind of like having its own independent database, and what we did in this lesson is just give you a head start. This is the end of the video section for bringing up ACT data. Now we're going to move on to the next section discussing how to bring in data from Zoho to Google Maps. Let's jump into Zoho CRM. For Zoho, I wanted to show you how to build a Zoho view and use the export feature to get data out of the system. You can also use the Zoho CRM report writer, but that goes a little bit beyond the video's objective. I recommend avoiding something called the sheet view to export data. So let me show you where that is. I recommend avoiding this because I ran into several unexpected problems. I wanted to upload data using the unique ID of each record so it's easier to update for future uploads once you get that data into Google My Maps from the sheet view. But I just ran into too many problems. Google My Maps didn't like the way the Zoho sheet view presented those ID numbers. It was a waste of time trying to manipulate it further in Excel since the Zoho view sheet export tool wasn't really cooperative when it came to manipulating the data. I realize that's not quite a positive assessment of Zoho CRM for this obscure use case, but I believe you should avoid the trouble I ran into while creating this video. There are better ways, and we'll show you how to use the Zoho view feature. So let's get into this and export some data. This is more of a long-term strategy. I like leveraging what's called the views feature in Zoho. So I will go to leads. Instead of using the filter here, what I will use instead is to create a view. So let's go here and create a new custom view. And what I need to do here after making a name is figure out which contacts do I want out of here. So I'm going to grab these contacts, but I want a little more of a filter as well. Let's make sure they actually have something in the address fields. So I'm going to make sure something's filled in the street, something's filled in the city, something's filled in state, and something's filled in the zip code. So we have, let's also make sure there's a company name. And so you have something that gives you a decent looking lead to plot onto Google My Maps. So now we have which criteria. Let's figure out how they're going to be displayed. I'm going to just rearrange them here. I'll put the company. You got your first name and last name if you want that on the map, but they need a street. They need a city. They need a state. And they need a zip code. But what I also want to have in there is the industry. And now let's rearrange it. So I'm going to put this at the bottom. And now we have company. Oh, I can't not have last name in there, so let's bring in first name here. So I have the company, first name, last name, street, city, state, zip, industry, and lead status. You can share this view with everybody or just a few users, but in this case, this is just for me. Let's hit save. Now I have the data I want arranged in the columns I want that is efficient for Google My Maps. So the next phase is to get this so it's exportable. Let's go to Actions. And instead of using the sheet view, you can use something called export leads. So if there's more than 100 of them, you can export up to 200,000 records at once. But I don't think Google My Maps will take that many. So I've got my leads. This is my view. These are my fields. And I hit export. And eventually it will be done. It's usually pretty quick, maybe a few seconds, maybe a minute or two. Once it's completed, the download icon is hidden, but then you hover over here and you find it. Let's go to download, save as. It's actually a zip file. So let's go open that. And what I'll do in this case is just double click it. And there's the CSV file. In this case, I'll just copy it. Put it in my downloads directory, and it's ready to import into Google My Maps. Okay, I believe we're ready to take the next step and import data into Google My Maps. All right, let's get some data into Google My Maps. If you haven't been to Google My Maps before, please note it's a little different than the standard Google Maps program that you use on a daily basis to look up driving directions, local restaurants, or find the nearest taco place. So go to mymaps.google.com, and if you have a Google account, it will get you all ready. So at the beginning of the interface here, we're at Google My Maps. Let's create a new map. And I'll just call this the Zoho CRM demo map. Let's grab that CSV file we recorded earlier. Import, browse. Here's your file. And we need to choose the columns that we need to geocode the location. So we need the street, city, state, and zip. Let's hit continue. This is your main title for each of the points you're plotting onto the Google My Map. Let's use company and hit finish. And there you have it. These are all the data points from your leads. So let's make a couple cosmetic changes, but I think they're kind of important. Let's rename this. And a couple other things I like to do are changing the uniform style. Let's use the label as the company. And now I think that blue kind of blends in a little too much. You can change the icons here as well. So let's turn that into houses with yellow, and that's a little more distinct. So now as you go into each of the leads, you will see the data that came over from Zoho CRM. The reason I brought in that record ID in is if, let's say, you go in here and re-import data. So you can have it merge matching items, you can re-import the whole thing, you can add more items to the data, or you can even change the data here. So if we have the unique ID coming over from Zoho CRM, it's easier to change airway systems. So if it's a new contact or if they've changed addresses, it's easier to update the same record in both systems. Or maybe they've gone from junk lead into a good lead. It doesn't matter. As long as you have that unique ID, it's easy to manipulate both sides of the CRM and Google My Maps without creating duplicate contacts. And there you have it. There's your data plotted into Google My Maps from Zoho CRM without investing in third-party software. And you've reached the end of this section. Hope you got some useful tips on how to leverage your CRM system and take advantage of Google's free tools without spending hard dollars on more software. By the way, if you need additional help with any of these CRM systems, we're glad to help. Visit our website for more articles, videos, or listen to our podcasts on all the popular platforms. Our show is called Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo. We discuss trends, technology, and tactics to help entrepreneurs improve sales, save money, and fulfill a personal mission.